Ready for takeoff. Today we're diving into the life of a true icon, Elton John. We got a pretty standard bio from you guys, but trust me, there is a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. Elton John's a perfect example of someone who, the more you dig, the more you realize just how fascinating they really are. Sure, the music's incredible, but he's also a savvy businessman, a dedicated philanthropist, really just a fascinating figure all around.
Right, let's start at the beginning. We got to talk about Reginald Kenneth Dwight. I mean, come on, not exactly a name you'd picture on a stadium marquee, is it?
Huh. Yeah, not quite the rock star name.
But even as a kid, the talent was undeniable. A scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music at 11 years old, that's not just good genes, that's serious dedication.
Oh, absolutely. The Royal Academy, that's the real deal, not your average music school. And that classical influence, it's all over his music, even the rock stuff. Gives it that unique edge, I think.
Totally. And speaking of unique, that's where Elton John comes in.
Right? Bye-bye, Reginald.
The sources say Elton was from a bandmate, Elton Dean, and John from Long John Baldry.
Both great names.
Oh, for sure. Elton John. That's iconic. And it gets even better. In '74, he legally changes his middle name to Hercules.
Wait, seriously?
Dead serious, but not after, like, the Greek god. No, after a horse.
A horse?
Yeah, from a British sitcom, Steptoe and Son. You can't make this stuff up.
That's amazing. You know, it makes sense, though. It's that self-awareness, that playfulness he's always had. It was the peak of glam rock. Everyone's putting on a show, but he took it to a whole other level.
And you can't talk about Elton John without talking about Bernie Taupin. They were true partners in crime, musically speaking.
An incredible partnership.
Can you imagine writing lyrics and just handing them off? No explanations, no deep dives into your feelings, just, here you go, Elton, work your magic.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
Such trust. And I think that's the key to their success. Yeah. It wasn't about literal meanings. It was about capturing a feeling. Bernie gave Elton the words, the framework, and Elton infused it with his own emotions, his own experiences.
It's funny, though, because our sources say there are songs where Elton's convinced they're about him, but Bernie said, nope, that one's about me.
Really?
Yeah. Do you think Elton's ever figured that out?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I kind of love that, though. You
Yeah.
know? It shows how powerful art can be. It's open to interpretation. Sometimes those unintended meanings, those happy accidents, are what resonate the most.
Totally. Okay, ready for a hard left turn from sequins and feather boas to, wait for it, soccer.
Now, this is a side of him I bet most people don't know about.
This guy wasn't just a fan, he was the chairman of Watford Football Club.
And not just a name on a letterhead, he was really in the trenches. Took them from the 4th division all the way to the 1st.
From zero to hero. You don't see that kind of dedication from a rock star every day, although our sources say he could be ruthless, especially when it came to managers.
Really?
Oh, yeah. If he didn't think someone was cutting it, they were gone. Same drive he had with this music, I guess.
That's fascinating. So it's that same ambition, just applied in a different arena.
Absolutely, but there's another layer to this, too. This is a guy who's played piano for John Lennon, Bob Dylan, Ringo Starr, even Bon Jovi. Talk about range.
The man's a musical chameleon.
Yes.
And think about the caliber of artists we're talking about. These are legends who sought him out. He wasn't just playing notes, he was adding his own unique voice to their music.
Totally. Okay, let's talk about the music that made him a legend. One song in particular stands out. Someone Saved My Life Tonight. You'd never know it from the upbeat tempo, but it actually came from a really dark time.
Right, the Linda Woodrow period. He was engaged to be married, and it was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly a fairy tale romance.
Our sources say the song was inspired by a real conversation he had with Long John Baldry. Apparently, Baldry basically talked him out of going through with the wedding.
Wow.
Can you imagine the pressure to be on the verge of this huge life decision and pour your heart out into a song about it?
It's that vulnerability, that rawness, that makes that song so powerful, even decades later. He wasn't afraid to show his scars, you know? And it reminds us that behind all the glitz and glam, there's a real person with real struggles.
Absolutely. Speaking of putting it all out there, we got to talk about the Troubadour.
Yeah.
1970s, 6 nights, this little club in L.A., and Elton just explodes.
Talk about a star-making moment. The energy, the buzz, you can practically feel it reading the accounts.
Our sources actually quote the Chicago Sun-Times as saying, and I quote, he was a major star before the end of his first set.
Oh, no, they were right.
It's crazy. And it wasn't just hype. Your Song, which he debuted there, became his first big hit. That's when the whole world took notice.
It was off to the races after that, hit after hit, album after album. Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirty Cowboy, Rock of the Westies both went straight to #1. Nobody had done that before, back-to-back like that.
It's unheard of. And think about this. When he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in '94, guess who did the honors?
Let me guess. Someone totally unexpected.
Axl Rose.
No way.
Talk about crossing genres. But that's the thing about Elton. He connects with people on such a deep level. It transcends musical categories.
Totally. And we can't talk about his legacy without talking about his philanthropy, especially his work with AIDS awareness.
Absolutely. This was during a time when the stigma was so strong, and he used his platform to speak out, to raise awareness, to make a real difference.
And he wasn't just lending his name to a cause, he was on the front lines, auctioning off his record collection, throwing those legendary Oscar parties, even auctioning off a date with Cindy Crawford, all to raise money for AIDS research.
That takes guts, especially back then. And it's clear this wasn't just a cause for him, it was deeply personal. Which leads us to another really important part of his story, his journey with his own sexuality.
Right, and it's a complex one for sure.
Our sources point to that 1976 Rolling Stone interview. That's when he first publicly came out as bisexual.
Bold move, especially at that time.
Huge. And this wasn't just talk, he put it into his music. Elton's song, that came out in '81. It's a beautiful but heartbreaking song about a schoolboy's crush on another boy.
Wow.
He was tackling some really tough subjects, bringing LGBTQ plus issues into the mainstream.
That's powerful stuff, especially considering the social climate back then.
Totally. But then a few years later, he marries Renee Blauwell.
Right, the marriage.
It seemed to contradict everything he'd been saying about his sexuality. A lot of people were confused.
Yeah, and it's important to approach this part of his life with sensitivity. He's been very open about the fact that the marriage was partly an attempt to conform, to please his mother, to fit into this box that society was trying to put him in.
It's a reminder that self-discovery is a process, right? It's not always a straight line.
Exactly. And for Elton, that journey led him back to his truth. As the AIDS epidemic escalated, he became even more vocal in his activism, more determined to use his voice to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves.
It was like this turning point. He'd confronted his own struggles, and he channeled that experience into something really powerful.
And that's when he meets David Furnish.
The love of his life.
Right. Over 30 years together, and they eventually get married in 2014. It's a beautiful testament to the power of love, of finding your person and building a life that feels authentic.
It really is. Okay, but we can't talk about Elton John without talking about
The costumes.
the costumes. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. Feathers, sequins, platform shoes that defied gravity. It was performance art.
He understood the power of spectacle, of creating a whole experience, not just a concert. And those costumes, as outlandish as they were part of the fun.
Absolutely. And let's not forget about the flower budget.
Oh my gosh, the flowers.
Our sources say this man spent over $293,000 on flowers in just 21 months.
Ah.
That's dedication to aesthetics.
I mean, why not? If you can have a flower budget like that, why not?
Mm-hmm.
But in all seriousness, it does speak to this larger-than-life persona he created.
Totally. But like all of us, his life hasn't been all sunshine and roses. The late 80s, early 90s were a rough time for him. He was battling bulimia, struggling with addiction, going through a very public divorce.
He was a dark period for him, for sure. And I think it serves as a reminder that even those who seem to have it all, who seem invincible, they're human too. They struggle, they hurt, they fall down just like the rest of us.
And then on top of everything else, he loses his close friend, Ryan White, to AIDS-related complications in 1990.
Just devastating.
You can only imagine what that kind of loss does to a person, especially when they're already going through so much.
It's a testament to his strength, his resilience, that he was able to come out of that dark period, not just intact, but stronger.
He got sober, he dedicated himself to his philanthropy, and his music continued to evolve.
Speaking of his music, we got to talk about his duets. This guy could harmonize with anyone.
Seriously, I mean, don't go breaking my heart with Kiki D.
Toxic.
#1 hit. And then, of course, there's Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me with George Michael.
Goosebumps every time.
That's what friends are for. With Dionne Warwick, Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder, the man was a duet machine.
He just had this knack for blending his voice with others, for creating these moments of pure musical magic.
And of course, no discussion about Elton John's duets would be complete without mentioning Candle in the Wind.
Oh, absolutely not.
His performance at Princess Diana's funeral in '97.
Heartbreaking.
It was more than just a song. It was this shared moment of grief for millions around the world.
He rewrote the lyrics, to make it about Diana.
Really?
Yeah, and the raw emotion in his voice, the simplicity of the piano, it just hit everyone right in the heart.
Gives me chills just thinking about it. And even after all of that, the Grammys, the Oscars, the global fame, he was still going strong.
Oh, he never slowed down.
Our sources say he played his 60th show at Madison Square Garden in 2017. 60.
That's unbelievable.
The man was a machine.
A musical machine. But it shows you he never lost that connection with his audience.
Never. Which, of course, brings us to the $1 million piano.
Oh, yeah, the piano.
Covered in LED screens.
Why not, right?
Exactly.
It's like something out of a dream. It took Yamaha like 4 years to build that thing. 60 LED screens all integrated into the design.
It's the perfect symbol of his career, isn't it? Over the top, innovative, and totally unapologetically Elton.
He stayed true to himself, From the beginning, from those early days as Reginald Dwight, the shy kid with all that talent, to the global icon he is today. He never compromised who he was.
And that's an incredible message, isn't it? To be yourself no matter what. Embrace the things that make you unique.
Absolutely. He had his struggles, his ups and downs, but he always came out stronger, more sure of himself.
It's been quite a journey, this deep dive. From those early hits to, well, chocolate statues.
Don't forget the flowers.
Oh, man, the flowers. But that's Elton John for you. He lived life on his own terms, broke all the rules, and made some incredible music along the way.
And inspired millions in the process.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, think about this. What's your Elton song? What's the story that only you can tell?
Love that.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for listening.